Boots, you're in my seat. Yay. How's it going, everybody? Lampini again. Another fantastic week of football is upon us. Week 13 is on the horizon. Week 12 is in the books. We're more than halfway through the NFL season. Some teams have really stepped up. Others, not so much. We're going to be going over Week 13 here. Let's get into it. So first up, we have the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. On Thursday night. Both of these teams played on Thanksgiving last week. The Bills ended up beating the Lions 28-25, and then the Patriots ended up losing to the Vikings 33-26. So two pretty good showings by both teams. The Bills really needed this win. It looked for a second that they weren't going to win this game, and if they had lost to the Lions on Thanksgiving, it would have been a big loss. But they reestablished themselves. They did very well, and they eventually came up with the win. Josh Allen was 24-42, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, an 80.8 passer rating. In addition to that, he had 10 carries for 78 yards and a touchdown, so a very good showing by Josh Allen. Seems as though, like I said last week, his MVP showing, his MVP campaign has kind of dwindled a little bit with a couple bad games. I don't know how much that elbow injury is really affecting him, but he showed in this game that he can still put up some pretty good numbers, even though his passer rating was only 80.8, which is kind of on the lower side for him. But the team as a whole managed to still get it done, defeating the Lions. As for the Patriots, they had a very close game with the Vikings. They led the game going into the third quarter, but they gave up 10 points in the fourth quarter to the Vikings, where primetime Kirk Cousins eventually got the monkey off his back and actually managed to deliver a clutch performance in primetime. How about that? Maybe it was Thanksgiving. It was a special occasion for him. Mac Jones was 28 of 39, 382 yards, and 2 touchdowns for 119.8 passer rating. So a good game by Mac Jones. Early in the season, there was a bit of a quarterback controversy with him and Bailey Zappi, but it's games like this that can kind of reestablish Mac Jones as the Patriots starter. Now, the Patriots are 6-5 right now. They are on the outside looking into the playoff picture. They were the 7th seed last week, but they've lost that spot this week to the Cincinnati Bengals. So they have a lot of ground to make up here. This is a divisional matchup in Foxborough, so you never really know what's going to happen here. This is a game that the Patriots really need to win. If they lose this game, I'm not saying they're eliminated from playoff contention, but it's going to make things a lot more difficult for them. Bill Belichick always seems to make things happen. So you can never really truly count out the Patriots, especially with the elite defense that they have. That being said, the Bills are still a Super Bowl contender here. But God, again, it's a divisional matchup. You never know. Like, divisional matchups have the greatest case for upsets, just because the teams play each other twice a year. I am going to be going with the Bills, though. I think Josh Allen has I don't know what was going on with his elbow, but it seems like he can still play premier football with it. I think the Bills' defense is going to be good enough to neutralize the Patriots' average offense. I think this has the potential to be a low-scoring game just because the Patriots' defense is so good. But I do think the Bills are going to edge out a win here against the Patriots on Thursday night. So next up, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Atlanta Falcons. Both of these teams are well, I guess the Falcons really aren't necessarily completely eliminated with Tampa Bay losing. That was big for them, the fact that Tampa Bay lost. That gives them a lot more of a chance. They're 5-7, but they're still not eliminated just yet. The Steelers, they're 4-7, so, I guess they still have a chance to end the season above 500, although it doesn't really look like it right now. They came off of a pretty good win against the Colts on Monday. Kenny Pickett was 20 of 28, 174 yards, and an 87.5 passer rating. So he's starting to gain a little bit more confidence under center. The Steelers are a very young team right now. If you look at who their stars are, they have a rookie at quarterback. They have a rookie, George Pickens, at wide receiver, who, and again, had a very good catch on Monday. He's establishing himself as quite the stud. They have second-year running back in Najee Harris. So their offense is very young, and that's where their weak point is right now. However, they still have been able to score pretty well these last 2 weeks because they scored 30 points against the Bengals last week, and they scored 24 against the Colts this week. And as long as you can score that many points, with a defense as good as the Steelers' defense is, you have the potential to really start winning some games. I think that, the only chance the Steelers really have at making the playoffs this season is if they win out and finish 10-7. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's pretty much the only chance that they have. Again, as for the Falcons, like I said, they're very lucky that Tampa Bay lost their game, because if Tampa Bay had won, it would have made the Falcons' playoff chances a lot slimmer. Marcus Mariota was 15 of 25 for 174 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception with a 77.8 passer rating. The Falcons probably had the most gut-wrenching loss of the week. They were inside the red zone against the Commanders. They were down. They were down by, 6? So an extra point would have put them over 20-19. And watching that game, I don't know why they passed it, because they were in a good position to just kind of let the clock run and then score. When I was watching the game, I was like, well, they got a minute left. They burned all of Washington's timeouts. I don't understand why they don't. They ran the ball really well all game. I don't understand why they kept running the ball, trying to run the ball, and just churn out as much clock as they could. So when they inevitably do score, because it's 4-down territory, right? When they eventually do score, they give the Commanders no time on the clock. However, they decide to pass, and Washington's elite defense capitalized. We got the turnover in the red zone, and Falcons lost. So that was not good play calling on their part, because they had a lot of stuff going their way, and honestly, this is one of the closer wins that the Commanders had. The Falcons definitely had a chance to win this game, and in a game like this against the Steelers, a team that the Falcons have a better record than, they can't afford to have a heartbreaking loss like this against the Steelers. They need to win this game. But the Steelers are a well-run franchise. You never know what's going to happen with them. That being said, I do think the Falcons are going to win. I think they have a lot more to play for. It's at home. They have a good rushing attack. See, the thing is, Steelers' offense has looked better. I don't know if the Steelers' offense has kind of gotten into its stride a little bit with these last 2 games, with Kenny Pickett finally getting a bit more comfortable, developing chemistry with George Pickens. Najee Harris has had some pretty good games. I don't know if the Steelers are kind of turning a corner and they're going to continue that momentum into next season. But the Falcons have more to play for, so I am still going to be going with the Falcons for this one. So for our next game, we have the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. I'm going to keep this one kind of brief because this doesn't really have a lot of playoff implications. The Packers' loss to the Eagles really pretty much eliminates them, because the Packers at their best can be 9-8, which I really don't think is going to be enough for the 7th seed, with how competitive the NFC is. They still put up 33 points against the Eagles. That being said, they still gave up 40 points. So, God, if the Packers didn't go on that 5-game skid, they could very well still be on track, because if the Packers play a team like the Eagles this tough, they're still a good team, but they're just coming up short, and that's very atypical of the Packers. Aaron Rodgers was 11 of 16, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also 2 interceptions for a 95.8 passer rating. So the news broke last week that Aaron Rodgers has had a broken thumb since week 6. Maybe that's why he hasn't been playing as well. It seems as though he's still going to play out the remainder of the season. A lot of people are saying, is this the end of Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to retire after this season? No, I don't think that's going to happen. With the amount of rumors that Aaron Rodgers was either going to move to another team or retire after his MVP campaign, I think Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy who, he's not necessarily in his ways, but I think it's he likes just kind of chilling, going with the flow a little bit. He's developed some good chemistry with Christian Watson, and I think he's going to come back a lot stronger in 2023. I think there's a chance he wins Comeback Player of the Year, honestly. I think he might return to form. Now that it's let slip that he's had a broken thumb, your thumb is really important when you're throwing that football. So it's no wonder he hasn't been playing very well, But he still threw some pretty good dimes in the game against the Eagles, and that's why all these people saying, is this a changing of the guard, with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, the stalwarts going over to the younger guys? I don't think it's quite that point yet with Aaron Rodgers. I feel like a lot of people thought it was over for him in 2019 and 2018 when he had some bad games. I think Aaron Rodgers is just an incredibly durable player. I think he's going to play into his 40s. I think once he gets surgery on his thumb, there is a strong possibility that he comes back better than ever, especially with the way Christian Watson's been developing. The team as a whole isn't as good as it's been the last 3 years in Green Bay, but I think that they're going to come back better. As for the Bears, Justin Fields didn't play in this game, and it seems to be that is all the Bears really have right now is Justin Fields. They really got to build their team around him. Because Trevor Siemian played instead, who coincidentally, he was 14 to 25, 179 yards, a touchdown, a pick, a 75.3 passer rating. You know, the Bears are in rebuild mode right now. They lost out to the Jets pretty bad. It was 31 to 10. So they have a lot of work to do. But it's all going to center around Justin Fields. And Justin Fields has shown some pretty good development. So I just realized I said I'd keep this short and I go on a rant again. I'm going to finish this up pretty quickly here. So the Bears, all they have is Justin Fields. They're in a rebuild year. The Packers still own the Bears. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. The Packers are still a good team. I think they're going to beat the Bears. I think they're going to beat them pretty handily. I'm going to be going with the Packers on this one. So next up, we got two more sort of, looking towards next season here. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Detroit Lions. The Lions almost got a 4-game win streak, almost beating out the Bills. They're 4-7 now. Lions are kind of looking forward to next year now. I don't really think they're going to make a playoff run. Same goes for the Jaguars, who had a very good win against the Ravens. They're also 4-7, but this was more of a morale victory for the Jaguars. It was a career-defining game for Trevor Lawrence. The Ravens were up by 2 possessions with about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So while I think that was impressive by Jacksonville to move all the way down the field, I think this win is a lot more on the Ravens defense really blowing it. That being said, Trevor Lawrence still had a very good game. He was 29 of 37, 321 yards, and 3 touchdowns for 129.8 passer rating. Trevor Lawrence is definitely getting better. This is a marked step up from last season with Urban Meyer as his coach. I remember I was watching something where a Jacksonville Jaguars player, he was a defensive player, basically saying how much he loves this team and what Doug Peterson has done for it. He said that Trevor Lawrence basically didn't even have a rookie year because Urban Meyer did nothing to help him out, which I still think goes to show how terrible of a coach he was. But Trevor Lawrence has made a marked step up. He is really starting to show the potential that he had going into the season. And he showed that in that game-winning drive against the Ravens. So while the Jaguars aren't really playoff contenders anymore, unless they win out and finish up at 10-7, which I guess is a possibility, I don't think it's really going to happen, though. I think that they're going to defeat the Lions here. The Lions had a tough loss against the Bills. It looked like they may have been able to get that 4th straight win. And if they went to 5-6, then, maybe they have a chance at a wild card berth. They may start to slowly build themselves back up. But with this loss, I think that they're pretty much eliminated. Jared Goff still had a pretty good game. He was 23 of 37, 240 yards and 2 touchdowns with a 98.9 passer rating, so he still had a pretty good game. And Amon-Ra St. Brown is back with 9 receptions, 122 yards and a touchdown. So their offense is still operating pretty well. But I think the rest of the season is going to be dedicated to them kind of rebuilding and redeveloping for 2023. And maybe they can get off to they got off to a good start last season, but continue that start into the rest of the season. So I'm going to be going with the Jaguars on this one. So next up, we have a game with actual playoff implications. We have the New York Jets at the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is Zach Wilson. He was benched for Mike White for this game. If you remember last week, Zach Wilson had probably one of the worst games the starting quarterbacks had all season against the Patriots. Did not look good at all. And he was benched for it. And something that also was an issue was it seems as though he wasn't connecting with his team. It seems like the team supports Mike White more than Zach Wilson. And that's a big problem because it's one thing to not play well, but if you don't have your team support, like if the team doesn't rally around you and you don't play well, that's a bit of an issue. Now, Chris Sims on NBC Sports, he was saying that this game against the Bears would have been the perfect get-right game for Zach Wilson. And I kind of understand what he means because the Bears, they didn't even have Justin Fields. So the Bears didn't really have anything going for them in this game. It was going to be an easy win by the Jets. So I think what Chris Sims was trying to say was, get Zach Wilson in there, make this game purely just a confidence-boosting game for him, where he goes in there, he plays a bad team, but he plays well, gets his confidence back, and he keeps going. I think that if Zach Wilson's only problem was that he wasn't playing well, then you could have done that. But it seems like the team doesn't rally around him. And as a quarterback, that's such an important part of your job because you're the head of the offense. You lead the offense. So the team needs to support you. It needs to follow you. God, I can't remember which quarterback said this, but it's very humbling to have, 10 grown men in a huddle look at you for instruction on what you're supposed to do. You are the leader in that offense. And if Zach Wilson isn't that leader, then he needs to figure it out. It's one thing if he played really well, which he's not. Mike White, on the other hand, did extremely well. He was 22 of 28, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns for 149.3 passer rating. Garrett Wilson had 5 receptions for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. So a great game by Mike White. However, again, this is against a bad Bears team. Will that change when they play a better team in the Minnesota Vikings? I don't think he's going to be having, a 6 incompletion, 3 touchdown game against the Vikings. This is, kind of inflated numbers a little bit. But I think Mike White should stay in. If he keeps playing badly, then maybe you can put in Zach Wilson. But it seems like for the time being, Zach Wilson has lost the starting job. I don't know if it's permanently, but we'll have to see. As for the Vikings, they had a very solid win on Thursday night against the Patriots. They are now 9-2, still fighting for that number 1 seed. Kirk Cousins with an uncharacteristic primetime performance where he was 30 of 37, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 116.1 passer rating. So Kirk Cousins actually had a pretty good game in primetime. I think the Thanksgiving jitters really got him in this one. And Justin Jefferson had 9 receptions for 139 yards and a touchdown. So a solid performance by Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins. They scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to defeat a strong Patriots team. It always seems like the Vikings have had to make fourth quarter comebacks to win some of these games, and this is no exception. But it was a very solid win. I think this win is a lot more impressive for the Vikings than the Jets' win is against the Bears. Again, because the Bears are a lower tier team. The Patriots still have an elite defense. I believe, they have a top 10, maybe top 5 defense. And for the Vikings to put up 33 points, I think it shows a lot about the Vikings offense. For that reason, I'm going to be going with the Vikings on this one. I think the Jets do have better defense than the Patriots, but I think that, especially Justin Jefferson, Sauce Gardner has been a shutdown corner, but I wonder if he can truly shut down Justin Jefferson, And if Justin Jefferson can still help them move the ball, they still have Dalvin Cook, an incredible running back. I think that if the Vikings can score 33 points against the Patriots defense, I see no reason why they can't score 25 against the Jets defense. I think it's going to be close, but I am going to be going with the Vikings on this one. Next up, we got another interesting game. We have the Tennessee Titans versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Titans lost to the Bengals last week, 20-16. They're now 7-4. They're still they're still comfortably in the lead of their division, but their division has the Jaguars, Texans, and Colts. So the Titans could be a 500 team and still make the playoffs. I don't think they're a product of an easy division because they still played the Bengals pretty tough, but you would want to see a little bit more from them in this game. Ryan Tannehill was 22 of 34 for 291 yards for a 91.7 passer rating. He didn't have a single passing touchdown, which is a bit disconcerting. As for the Eagles, they put up 40 points against the Packers on Sunday night. Incredibly impressive performance, most notably from Jalen Hurts. He was 16 of 28, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 96.3 passer rating. In addition, he had 17 carries for 157 yards. So he had 153 passing yards and 157 rushing yards. Jalen Hurts, I think, is in the MVP conversation. I don't think he's better than Patrick Mahomes or even Tua Tagovailoa right now, but he has made enormous progress as the Eagles starting quarterback. They're 10-1. They have the best record in the NFL. And despite what everyone says about them being pretenders, I still think that they are a good team. I still think that they're a top team. Now, when you get into the playoffs, things are always going to be different, but I still think they are the best team in the NFC right now. I still think that they're a front runner for the Super Bowl. The only other NFC team that I think can challenge them is the Vikings, maybe the Cowboys, but they're still solid. And I think the Eagles are going to win this one as well. I think that the Eagles are just relentless when it comes to their offense, and I think their defense is incredibly solid as well. They got a great offensive line. They have a great defensive line, which is going to really neutralize Derrick Henry. I think the Titans are going to lose 2 in a row. They're still going to be comfortably in the lead of their division, so I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Titans fan. I'm going to be going with the Eagles on this one. Okay, so another interesting contest. We got the Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens. Both of these teams had pretty heartbreaking losses. I'm going to start with the Ravens, though. If you look at this graphic right here, these are all of the Ravens' losses because they're 7-4. So they're 7-4. So that means that these are all 4 their losses. They were down 9. They were up 9 points. That's 2 possessions with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they blew their lead. This is a serious problem. You can say whatever you want about all 4 of these losses. They were in the lead at one point, and any of these games easily could have turned in their favor, and they could easily be a 9-2 or 8-3 team. But it's incredibly telling when a team like the Jaguars lets Trevor Lawrence drive down the field so effortlessly, and that 2-point conversion, Zay Jones made the reception. He just smoked the guy who was supposed to be covering him. I don't remember who it was, but that's one of the easiest 2-point conversions I think I've ever seen. And that it was for the win. The Ravens defense completely crumbled in that game. I went to a friend's house after the Commanders had won to watch the rest of the Ravens game, and I was just like, this is unbelievable. Like, this is not good if you're a Ravens fan. Something that is good, Lamar Jackson played well, 16 of 32, 254 yards, 1 touchdown. He also rushed for 14 carries and 89 yards. So Lamar played well. I think that, and I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that came out where some guy was dogging on Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson responded to him it was a pretty heated response. Lamar Jackson was not the problem in that loss. It was the defense completely folding under pressure and letting the Jaguars drive the ball down the field like that. They had the opportunity to kind of barely squeak by with a win when Justin Tucker kicked that 67-yard field goal. It eventually came up short, but it's similar to last season when Justin Tucker kicked that 66-yarder against the Lions. The Ravens shouldn't have even been in that position to begin with. They were bailed out by that 4th and long that Lamar Jackson converted, and of course Justin Tucker breaking an NFL record, But games should not have to come down to this if you're the Ravens. The Ravens are 7-4. They have high expectations. This is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. You cannot let this kind of stuff happen. Because when you're in the playoffs and you're up by 2 possessions with 6 minutes left, you cannot let your foot off the gas like that. Because teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Bills, they'll do a lot more than just score 9 points in 6 minutes. They won't even let you get up like that. So I think the Ravens have a lot to think about because they had this game in the palm of their hands and they lost it. As for the Broncos, it keeps getting worse for them. Russell Wilson was 19 of 35, 142 yards, 1 touchdown, a 73.8 passer rating. That touchdown came in garbage time and it was one of the ugliest touchdowns ever. There was just penalty after penalty after penalty before he finally got into the end zone. I think the Broncos are one of the worst teams in the league right now. One of the funniest stats that I find is that Russell Wilson still doesn't have as many touchdowns as Carson Wentz does. And Carson Wentz has only played, his last game was in week 6. So Carson Wentz has played half of a season compared to Russell Wilson, and he's thrown more touchdowns than Russell Wilson. That's a serious problem. I don't know if Russell Wilson was a product of his system in Seattle, and that's why he was so prosperous. And now that the offense is built around him, like he's an Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, he's starting to fold. But I have never seen a fall from grace like this before, and it just keeps getting worse and worse for Denver. And it's a shame because they have a great defense that keeps them in games, and their offense just can't capitalize. So I don't know where the Broncos go from here. I think Nathaniel Hackett is going to be fired as head coach, but they have to make it work with Russell Wilson because he has so much dead cap space. They shouldn't have extended him before he played a single snap. That was their first mistake. I don't know why they did that, but it just made their situation even worse, you know? And the Broncos, I think, right now are in the worst situation of any team in the NFL right now. They thought they were going to get a franchise quarterback that was going to get them over the hump, but now they have a massive lead weight holding back their team. And it's a serious problem. I don't know if they bench him. I don't know if they get a head coach that's worked with him before to kind of improve him, but they're stuck with Russell Wilson. So they've got to make it work. As in consideration of this game, I think the Ravens are going to win. The Broncos offense has just been so anemic that I think the Ravens are going to handle them no problem. So I'm going to be going with the Ravens on this one. So next up, it's the game that we've all been dreading. We have the Cleveland Browns at the Houston Texans. Why have we been dreading this game? Because you know who is coming back. Deshaun Watson. And in typical NFL BS fashion, his first game back is against his former team. Deshaun Watson has not played a meaningful snap of football since week 17 of 2020. So to say that he's probably going to be a little rusty is an understatement. I think that, the Browns season is over. Any hope that the Browns had of making the playoffs when Deshaun Watson comes back is pretty much over. I don't think that he's going to magically make this team a playoff team. There's going to be a lot of growing pains that go with this just because Deshaun Watson has not been getting first-team reps. The Commanders play them next week as well, so I really hope that Deshaun Watson has some growing pains. For the final time this season, Jacoby Brissett. He was 23-37, 210 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 75.3 passer rating. I think that Jacoby Brissett has played very, very admirably. His last game, defeating Tampa Bay in overtime like this, is a good way for him to go out. And this is what's funny. If Baker Mayfield stayed with the Browns and he didn't get all stroppy when he heard that the Browns were interested, not even when they signed him, but interested in signing Deshaun Watson, because that's when the problems arose, when they said they were interested, not even when they signed him. If Baker stayed in his position and finished up in a similar way to Jacoby Brissett has finished, his stock would be so much higher. Jacoby Brissett, I think, has a chance to be a really good bridge quarterback next season. I think he's going to be a week 1 starter for a team that needs a quarterback. Whether he's going to start the whole season, I don't know. But he has shown that he is going to get some work, and he has proven that he's a solid starting quarterback. So you look at the two different approaches that these two players had. Baker Mayfield wanted to start immediately, and he died a death in Carolina. And Jacoby Brissett, you can see here, had a very, very respectable end to his time with Cleveland. And I think that might turn into another starting job for him down the road. So then Nick Chubb as well had a good game. 26 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown. He's still a solid contender. I would love for Houston to play spoiler and defeat the Browns. What poetic justice that would be. Houston will play teams tough every now and then. They unfortunately ran into a buzzsaw in Miami, losing 30-15. They had some garbage time touchdowns in there. It was like 30-0 by the end of the half. They took out Tua in the third quarter, I believe. So it was bad for Houston. I think Houston is so bad of a team that I don't even think they're going to be good enough to get an upset here. I think Nick Chubb will just run all over them. So I am still going to be going with the Browns on this one, and Deshaun Watson's going to be 1-0 since this entire saga began. It really is crazy how Deshaun Watson went from being a top 5 prospect, a young stud on the same level as Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Hurts, and now his legacy is going to be tarnished forever because of what's happened. That's what his career is going to be now. It's going to have that asterisk against it. But the Browns sold their soul to the devil, and now they're going to have to reap what they sow. So we'll see how he does. So next up, we got the Commanders at the New York Giants. So The Commanders, coming off of a very narrow victory against the Falcons, they are 7-5. This is the best record they've had since 2018, 4 years ago. They have had 7 wins or less in that span. I believe they had 7 wins in 2018 as well. But the Commanders have been the 7-win brigade, and they're 7-5 now. They get a chance to get their 8th win, go into the bye 8-5. If they beat the Giants here, they will not only be the 7th seed, but they'll have overtaken the Giants, because the Giants will then be 7-5. So they will be the 7th seed, and the Commanders will be not the lowest seeded wild card team, which, incredible. If you look here, the Commanders have had the best 7-week stretch so far. They are 6-1. No one is talking about how well the Commanders have been doing. And I think the reason the Commanders have been doing so well is I think they have found the formula for their team to succeed. I think they have found their game plan. Run the ball extremely hard, play solid defense, be opportunistic, get turnovers. Taylor Heinicke makes throws when he needs to make throws. They have I think they finally figured out their formula for success. Taylor Heinicke was 14 of 23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception for an 88.7 passer rating. Heinicke had a pretty good game. He threw a stupid interception where I guess he didn't see the coverage in front of the receiver, and he didn't lob it high enough, and the guy just picked it off. Fortunately, it ended up not being the end of the world for us. It was a pretty inconsequential interception, but Heinicke really needs to work on that, because if he doesn't throw that interception, it's without a doubt his best game to date. But, it was a bad interception, clearly. Brian Robinson also had a great game, 18 carries for 105 yards. Ever since Brian Robinson has come back, it's been a net positive for the team. Our two-headed rushing attack of Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson is what's making our offense so effective. We established the run to set up the pass, and, our offense isn't great. It's definitely not as good as our defense, but we were still able to score enough points to beat the other team, and that's all that matters. Against the Giants, though, it's going to be a bit more difficult. The Giants have proven that they're legitimate. Daniel Jones was 21 of 35, 228 yards, and a touchdown for an 88.7 passer rating against the Cowboys. They lost 28-20 on Thanksgiving, but I don't think that that's going to be it for the Giants. I think the Giants are still going to put up a good fight, but here's the thing. Call me biased, but I am going to be going with the Commanders on this one. I think both teams are very similar, but what I think is going to do it for us in this game is that the Commanders' defense is incredibly strong, and most notably, their defensive front is incredibly strong. Now, again, is Chase Young going to come back for this game? I don't know. I've been saying the past 5 weeks that Chase Young is going to come back, so I'm just going to assume that he's not going to. But they still have the best interior lineman duo in the NFL with Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen. That's going to make running the ball with Saquon a lot more difficult. Not to say that they're not going to be successful, because the Falcons were still successful when they ran the ball. So I think Saquon is still going to get his carries. But I think the best offense against the Commanders is a very strong passing attack, which the Giants don't have. And I think that the Commanders, the Giants' defense, again, is good, but I think they're going to employ a similar game plan to what they did against the Eagles, where they're going to run the ball down the Giants' throat. They're going to maintain possession, long, sustained drives, keep the ball out of Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley's hands, score on these long, sustained drives, and just stay in front. And I think that's their ticket to success, and that's why I'm going to be going with the Commanders on this one. So next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the LA Rams. The Rams are at the bottom of their division. I think they officially have the worst Super Bowl hangover of any team in NFL history. There have been a lot of Super Bowl champions that have not made the playoffs, but never a team that's finished last in their division like this. It's going to go down in history, I think. When you go all out for a Super Bowl ring, you get that ring, and then you reap what you sow, and you just become a bottom dweller. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Rams dig themselves out of this hole that they've dug for themselves. Matt Stafford didn't even play. Bryce Perkins played. It was his first career start. He was 13 of 23, 100 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions for a 45.5 passer rating, so not great. But the team as a whole isn't playing well. Cooper Kupp is out. like the whole team, they're like the Bears, where their season's pretty much over. They're looking to the future, and they got to figure out how they're going to right the ship because they are in dire straits right now. As for the Seahawks, they also had a pretty bad loss last week. They lost out to the Raiders 34-40, which was a very good game. It was like a track meet. It was a huge shootout. But especially in the Seahawks position, they can't afford to lose to the Raiders like this. And I picked Seattle. It was a bad loss because they are fighting for the division with the San Francisco 49ers and the 7th seed with the Commanders. Commanders won, Seattle lost. So now Seattle's in a bit of a hole. If they can somehow manage to win and the Commanders lose, then they're back in the saddle. I think that against a team as bad as the Rams, I don't think the Seahawks are going to have that much of a problem defeating them. So I am going to be going with the Seahawks on this one. But they can't afford to lose to an inferior team like the Raiders ever again like this, especially in the position that they're in. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks on this one. So next up, we have the Miami Dolphins at the San Francisco 49ers. So this game is going to be a good one. The 49ers, Super Bowl contenders, they're 7-4. Jimmy G is playing well. They shut out the Saints 13-0. It was a solid performance. They're looking good. The Dolphins, I mean, we all expected it, right? The Dolphins winning this week against the Texans, like it was going to happen. Tua Tagovailoa was 22-36, 299 yards, a touchdown, 96.9 passer rating. Still making a very good case for an MVP candidacy. I think he's going to get some MVP votes, but I don't think he's going to win it. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both had exactly 85 yards on 6 and 7 receptions respectively, which I think is pretty cool. Shows how much of a dual threat they are. Right now, the Dolphins, if the Dolphins are one and done in the playoffs, it'd be considered a disappointment for them because they are going to make the playoffs. They're looking to win their first playoff game since the year 2000. So put that into perspective for you. That's just one season removed from Dan Marino winning a playoff game for them. So that shows you how little success the Dolphins have had in recent history. They are going to be playing, like I said, a strong 49ers team. I think that the 49ers needed to show a bit more on offense against the Saints because the Dolphins' offense is a juggernaut. While the 49ers have a good defense, they need to be able to respond with good offense. And I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, but I do think the Dolphins are eventually going to pull it out. I'm going to be going with the Dolphins on this one. So we got another solid game here for you guys. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Cincinnati Bengals. So right now, the Bengals are back in the playoff picture. They're 7-4. They're the number 7 seed. They're still trying to maintain their wild card spot. And the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to further solidify their number 1 seed in the AFC. So still a lot to play for between these two teams. Patrick Mahomes, 27-42, 320 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Respectable game on his part. Joe Burrow, 22 of 37, 270 yards, 1 touchdown, a 91 passer rating. T. Higgins had 7 receptions for 114 yards and 1 touchdown. That is very good as well. Jamar Chase may be out, and while I think that's going to be a big blow for them come playoff time, they still got T. Higgins, they still have Tyler Boyd, they still have Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine even. They still have plenty of weapons on offense where they can get the job done. They beat the Titans, which is a very, very good team to beat. They're a playoff team. As for the Chiefs, they obviously beat the Rams. The Rams are they're terrible. Chiefs 9-2. They won 26-10 against the Rams. It was a very impressive showing on their part. Who's going to win this game? I think this one could go either way. I think that the Chiefs are still at the height of their powers, and I think they're still going to beat the Bengals. The kind of team that I think is going to beat the Chiefs is a team with an elite defense that's going to keep the Chiefs scoring keep it low scoring, and then the other team is going to have a game-winning drive, and they'll be on the correct side of the clock, or they're the ones who get the ball last and score, basically, is I think how the Chiefs are going to be beaten at this point. So I'm going to be going with the Chiefs on this one still. It's going to be very close. We may see them play each other again in the playoffs, but I'm going with the Chiefs. Now, this next game, we got division rivals here, the LA Chargers at the Las Vegas Raiders. The Chargers needed to win against the Cardinals last week, and they did. It kept their playoff hopes alive. They are 6-5 in the hunt right now. Very, very gutsy call by Brandon Staley to go for it for that 2-point conversion to basically win the game. If you don't make that 2-point conversion and you go 5-6, your season's basically over because you're under the Patriots, you're under the Bengals, and those teams are not going to collapse for you. So they went out and they won the game, which I think was very, very impressive. Justin Herbert was 35 of 47, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, 109.7 passer rating. So a career outing for Justin Herbert. As for the Raiders, it seems like the Raiders are kind of getting their footing now because I feel like this is, they won a couple weeks ago as well. I think it seems like Josh McDaniels is a really good offensive mind, but I don't know if he has what it takes to be a head coach because their offense was buzzing. They scored 40 points. Derek Carr was 25 of 36 for 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Josh Jacobs, though, was the MVP of this game. He had 33 carries, 229 yards, and 2 touchdowns, but he also had 6 receptions for 74 yards. So he had 303 yards from scrimmage. That's the most a Raiders running back has ever had. Incredibly impressive. Josh Jacobs, and apparently this is a contract year for him as well. So his stock is about to shoot up. He leads the league in rushing right now. And you know what really sucks about it is I traded him at week 3 of the NFL season. I don't remember who I got, but terrible trade on my part. I'm 1-10 right now. It's been a bad year for me, but not for Josh Jacobs. He is having a phenomenal year. So what's going to happen in this game? I see a Raiders upset, actually, because the Raiders put up 40 points against the good Seattle team. The Chargers barely squeaked by a 4-win Cardinals team. The Chargers seem like one of those teams that really plays down to their competition. And with a team as potent as an offense as the Raiders seem to have, I think that the Chargers could get caught with their pants down a little bit in this game. And they can't afford to have that happen because the wild card race is incredibly competitive now. The Bengals are 7-4 and they're the 7th seed. So the Chargers cannot afford to lose again. They're also battling with the Patriots as well. So they cannot afford to lose here, but I think they might. So I'm going to be going with the Raiders on this one. So next up, we have the Indianapolis Colts at the Dallas Cowboys. So the Colts, they lost pretty convincingly to the Steelers yesterday being Monday. And the Cowboys had a very impressive win against the Giants on Thanksgiving, 28-20. Matt Ryan has been doing marginally better since Jeff Saturday took over. He still hasn't been great. He was 22 of 34, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for a 77.9 passer rating. It's really crazy how, I thought Matt Ryan was going to be the best out of the quarterback carousel they've had, being, Jacoby Brissett, then Phillip Rivers, then Carson Wentz, and now this. I thought Matt Ryan was going to be their best addition. They might have been better off keeping Carson Wentz, to be honest, because Carson Wentz, I think, put up the best statistical season out of those 4. But they need to go into the draft and draft their future quarterback and actually develop him. Maybe have Matt Ryan start the first couple games in 2023, but eventually hand the keys over to their new quarterback because they need a changing of the guard and they need it now. So whether that happens or not, don't know. As for the Cowboys, another very impressive showing by them. Dak Prescott was 21 of 30, 261 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 91.1 passer rating. Ezekiel Elliott, 16 carries for 92 yards and 1 touchdown. And then CeeDee Lamb had 6 receptions for 106 yards. So a very, very impressive showing by the Cowboys. Their offense is really starting to get going. Their defense is elite as well. I've seen a lot of Instagram posts saying that the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders, and it's hard for me to take that seriously with how the Cowboys have played in the playoffs. The best way I can describe the Cowboys, I believe I've said this before, but the best way I can describe them is they're bullies. They face lower-level competition, blow them out. They seem like the best teams in the world, but when they face legitimate competition, they crumble under the pressure. That's what's happened year in and year out, and it really shows in the playoffs. They're in a very similar situation to the Dolphins right now, where they've dominated the regular season, and anything more than playoff success will be a disappointment for them. That being said, they did beat a good Giants team. The Giants were 7-3 at that point. They had the same record as the Cowboys. So that being said, that's a bit of a feather in the cap for them. I don't think that stereotype of them being bullies, quote unquote, I don't think that narrative fits as much as it has, this season. They're facing legitimate opponents and they're beating them. But things can always change in the playoffs. And with this last game that we covered, it's another example of that, where the playoffs are a completely different animal than the regular season. And some teams do well in the playoffs, some teams underwhelm. Cowboys are one of those teams that have underwhelmed. It's going to start with them beating the Colts, and I think they're going to beat the Colts no problem. The Cowboys are pretty much just looking at ending the season on a high note, not limping into the playoffs, and continuing their momentum going forward. So I'm going to be going with the Cowboys on this one. All right, so last but not least, we got the Monday night game. We have the New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Saints got shut out against the 49ers. They didn't put up a single point, which happened 0 times in the Drew Brees era. I think the last time it happened, I believe they said, was 2001. But the Buccaneers also had a very tough loss against the Browns. This is one of those games that the Buccaneers really need to win. They really need to establish that they are a playoff contender. That being said, Tom Brady was 29-43, 246 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 97.6 passer rating. And then Chris Godwin had 12 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. So again, I know I keep saying this, Brady is not playing badly. He's having a subpar year than what we've seen before, but he's playing with a team that is a marked step down. This is something that Brady's never had to deal with before. A lot of Hall of Fame quarterbacks have been on bad teams, right? And their stats have shown that. That doesn't happen very often with Brady, but it's happening now. But still, he threw the ball 43 times, didn't throw a single interception, and had a 97 passer rating. So Brady's not washed. He can still play. He's just on a bad team. Like I said, this has happened a lot of times with other quarterbacks that have had good games, but their teams have still lost. How many times has that happened to Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs? It just doesn't happen with Brady. However, the Buccaneers are still at the top of their division at 5-6. I still think they're dangerous. This is what I was saying earlier. In the playoffs, it's a completely different game. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And when you got a guy like Tom Brady, your team can get hot in the playoffs in the same way that it happened with the Bengals, right? No one expected the Bengals to go as far as they do. A lot of what goes into playoff success is staying healthy and staying hot, And that could easily happen with the Buccaneers because they've had some pretty good games. But losing to the Browns like this does not look good for them at all. I do think they're going to beat the Saints. I think Brady is going to be able to pick apart their defense, and I think he's going to come up with the win. But right now, it's just going to be a matter for the Buccaneers to stay in front of the Falcons and go into the playoffs with as much momentum as possible. Because when the playoffs start, the regular season doesn't matter. Remember, the 7-9 Seahawks in 2011 won a playoff game after they were 7-9. So anything can happen. So they just need to stay strong. So I'm going with the Buccaneers on that one. Now, there are the picks. Let's take a look at the playoff picture. All right, so kicking it off with the NFC. The entire NFC East is in the playoffs right now. Starting off with the first round bye, we have the 10-1 Philadelphia Eagles. Then we got the Minnesota Vikings at 9-2. They're only a game back from first place, so they could very easily still steal that number 1 seed from them. At the number 3 seed, we got the San Francisco 49ers at 7-4. Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have the 4th seed, even though they're 5-6. And then you got at the 5, 6, and 7 seeds, you have the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders. How about that? It's the entire division. Cowboys 8-3, Giants 7-4, Commanders 7-5. Now, again, like I said, Commanders and Giants are playing each other this week. If the Commanders win, that brings them up to 8-5. Giants will go down to 7-5. Giants may be eliminated from the playoffs, or they may just swap places. It's going to be good for the Commanders to be the number 6 seed because it means they have some more wiggle room. But right now, the Commanders have been on the rise. They're playing good football, and it's paid dividends. They're in the playoff picture right now. On the bubble, it's a bit more competitive. The Seahawks are 6-5. They're going to be the main team, I think, that is going to fight for that wild card spot. Like I said, that loss to the Raiders was not good. They did not, that was a really bad loss for them looking at the context of where they are. So they're going to really need to bounce back. The Atlanta Falcons are 5-7. They are more so chasing after the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and their division spot because they're still only a game back. They are a game back from Tampa Bay, but they're 2 games back from the Commanders at the 7th seed. So they're mainly looking for their division crown. And then the 10th seed is the Detroit Lions, believe it or not, at 4-7. It doesn't really look like they're really going to be going anywhere, though. So that's the NFC. We had a lot of changes there. Now we're going to go into the AFC. The number 1 seed is still the Kansas City Chiefs at 9-2. The number 2 seeds are the Miami Dolphins at 8-3. So they're a game back from first place as well. A first-round bye for the Dolphins would be huge. They haven't seen the divisional round since 2000. So they haven't won a playoff game since 2000, but they also haven't even seen the divisional round since 2000. So they would still have a chance to not win a playoff game if they're one and done, but a first-round bye would be huge for them. Then, at the number 3 and 4 seeds, we have the 7-4 Tennessee Titans and Baltimore Ravens. Both of them lost. That loss was a little less inconsequential for the Titans because, again, they're way ahead of their division. But for the Ravens, this is a bit of an issue for them, and we'll show you why when we get into the wild card picture. So, at the number 5 seed, we have the Bills. They've kind of righted the ship a little bit. They were 6-3 at one point. They've won 2 straight. So they're 8-3 right now. They are tied with the Dolphins right now, so they could easily take that number 2 seed spot as well. So they're a game out of first place as well. Then we have the Bengals at the number 6 seed. They're 7-4. So they're tied up with the Ravens now. So the Ravens are in a bit of trouble here. They could lose their division lead if the Bengals really get hot and the Ravens lose. Don't think the Ravens are really going to lose to the Broncos this week, but they got to keep their eye out for the Bengals because they are within striking distance of them. And then the number 7 seeds were back at it with the New York Jets with a good bounce back game against the Bears. They were in the hunt last week, but they fired back really well, and now they're in the picture. Now, the bubble is a bit more competitive in the AFC. We have the Patriots and the Chargers, which are both 6-5. So both of those teams are a game out of the wild card. They're a game out of the 6th and 7th seed. So the Bengals and Jets are both 7-4. So if one of those teams lose and another one of these teams win, they are right back in the thick of things. The Patriots and Chargers. So, this is where, like I said, the Chargers will have to beat the Raiders. I don't think they're going to do it, but it would be a really big win for them because it will propel them right back into the playoff spot. So as you can see, there's 2 teams really on the bubble right now in the AFC. The Ravens are kind of running the risk of maybe sliding here. They just need to keep their foot on the gas. They need to start by beating Denver for one thing. If the Ravens lose to the Broncos, then it might be time to start panicking if you're the Ravens because your season is slipping from you. But right now, they are still in good contention. So that is the playoff picture. This 3rd wild card spot, I think, has really added a lot of excitement because a lot of teams that you may have thought were down and out are still fighting back here. Yet, it's still very competitive. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Week 13. Thank you all so very much for watching. I will see you next week. Peace out, guys.